Welcome to episode 2 of Conference Call Combat Radio. Today's topic, of course, UFC 322 is still going on this week. It is UFC 322 Fight Week, Islam Makhachev versus Jack Della Maddalena. And also, we're going to talk about Dana White saying that he is not MAGA. He's not MAGA, or I'm sorry, he is MAGA, but he says he's non-political. We're going to talk about that because I think that is a very interesting topic. And also, it's sort of one of these things that delves into political spectrums that many of you may not have thought of. Oops, sorry about that. Had a little bit of a fall there for a second. So, okay, as I was saying, yes, we're going to talk about Dana White and why he says he is not MAGA, or I'm sorry, not political, but supports MAGA. Obviously, because he supports his friend Donald Trump. Also, little housekeeping notes that we're going to have going on as we continue on with this radio show that we have going on right now is that we will also drop a new video that is coming out sometime at 5 o'clock, so around 1 hour and 20 minutes from now. So that video is going to talk about why Tom Aspinall is going to get stripped of his title. So a lot of really interesting things. Obviously, the main topic at hand that we are here to talk about is why Dana White is so adamant in saying that he is not MAGA. I'm sorry, that he is not political, but yet he is MAGA. I keep getting that mixed up. I'm sorry. Why he is not political, but yet he supports MAGA. And this is a common thing that a lot of people say. For example, you ever met a friend that said, hey, you know what? Growing up in Boston, when I was working at the shipyards, when I was working at the factory, or this and that, I was never a political guy. But you know what? For whatever reason, I like Donald Trump. And there's some crossovers to that reality that I think a lot of people really underestimate. So the first reaction video that I'm going to go through right now is Luke Thomas. Obviously, Luke Thomas is a very credited journalist, okay, one of the best MMA journalists out there. And what is interesting about Luke Thomas is not only is he a former U.S. Marine, he's also half Lebanese. He's also, well, I would say he's a Palestinian supporter, but also claims that he's not anti-Semitic. So that's also an interesting factor in Luke Thomas. But he is a staunch lefty for somebody who's a U.S. Marine. And a lot of people tend to get that misconstrued. See, they think of Marines as, well, monolithic in terms of being all Republican. Right? That's not necessarily the case. If you ever met any CIA people or people that work in the government or people that are in the United States Marines or are U.S. Army or Navy, Coast Guard, and things of that nature, one of the things that you would often notice is there are some who are left-wing liberals. For example, King Charles, who, by the way, served in the British Navy, was a staunch left-wing a left-wing liberal, right? Crying, die-hard liberal. Let's see, we got Don C, or is it Don C? Okay, so yeah, Don C says, hi, hello, how are you? Let me know what part of the world you are from. Right now, we will go into the Luke Thomas video and see exactly what it is that I'm talking about when it comes to the different dynamics of these political spheres. So here's Luke Thomas right now, and let's react to this.
I saw the most insane thing that UFC President Dana White said on a podcast recently. And at first I'm like, I didn't know whether to laugh or cry, to be honest with you. But having thought about it a little bit, I was actually like, you know what? There is a lesson here that's kind of important. Namely, there's been this, I won't call it a debate because there is no debate, but there's been this conversation that I've been embroiled in because I said MMA is a right-wing sport, which anybody who is not encumbered with partisan blinders and or some sort of cognitive learning disability can obviously see. I mean, it's
Look, I'm going to have to agree with that with Luke Thomas, okay? For one, let me give you an example, okay? The reason why I wholeheartedly agree with Luke Thomas on this one is because when you think of the history of, well, at least American mixed martial arts, right? Who has mostly dominated American mixed martial arts, at least in the past? Well, we can look at American wrestlers. So what exactly does that tell you when it comes to, let's say, the overall trajectory of wrestling? As as an art, right? An art of effectiveness, and an art that has been used all throughout let's say the mid 2000s. Obviously, the era of Matt Hughes, right? Mark Kerr. Look, wrestling, at least in the United States, comes from a lot of country farms, Iowa, Ohio. Even the countryside of New Jersey. New Jersey is pretty big in wrestling, but the majority of their top wrestling schools often come from what do you call it? Countryside places of the world. So, yeah, that's what do we got here? Lilia says C. Okay, so shout out to you on that one. Shout out to everybody in the chat. Everybody hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. You are now tuned in to episode number 2 of the conference call. Hold on, let me make sure that I have my thumbnail. I'm going to get my thumbnail going right here, and then we will get it on and cracking as we get the thumbnail going. Everybody in the chat, let me know what part of the world you are from as we discuss this very important topic of Dana White being pro-MAGA while also claiming that he is not political. So, all right, here's the, all right, we got the thumbnail going on right now. So there it is. Okay, back to Luke Thomas on this one.
Not in a good way, but certainly one of the most interesting turns I've ever seen any sport take in its lifetime, and it is unequivocal. It's top down. Yes, of course, some of it is just revealed preferences of what's already been there. I've even made that argument myself. In fact, I think it's a key portion of the argument. But of course, the other part of the argument is how the UFC and then MMA more broadly, but the UFC in particular, changed the way in which they operated to become a vector for right-wing politics. I'm going to play you what Dana White said, and then I want to react to it because...
Okay, so he said a vector for right-wing politics. Okay, so what exactly does Luke Thomas mean by that? Okay, let's take, for example, right, Trump back in, I don't know, maybe UFC 287 or something like that. He had an indictment placed upon him. On that very same day, what does he do? He goes and attends UFC 287, which, by the way, is headlined by Colby Covington and Jorge Masvidal. Which, by the way, are the two favorite fighters of Donald Trump at that time, right? So all it really did was sort of use that platform to get him back into his second term, right? Now, look, you can look at other leagues like the NBA. Of course, the NBA has espoused left-wing views such as Black Lives Matter, even LBGT content and things of that nature. But, man, I got to tell you, the UFC seems to be one-sided, right? At least that is from the view of the left-wing people. Now, look, do I hold these views? No, but I got to tell you, as a mixed martial arts content, it's probably because the majority of my fans or supporters are vehemently right-wing to a certain degree, even the Muslim ones. And by the way, I'm going to talk about the connection between the Muslims and the right-wing people. What did my man Fresh here says? He says, makeup artist is still on vacation. No, brother. You know, I just decided to do the content this way right now, but it doesn't mean that it's permanent. So, all right, here's back to Luke Thomas.
One of the things that's happened in this conversation around MMA being a right-wing sport is you'll note that when I said it, there was this massive reaction to it where people were in denial about it. They were like, that's not true. Again, some people were like, oh, well, it's always been that way, which again is part of the truth. It's not the whole truth. It's one half of the truth, but it is part of the truth. But the other part of the conversation was, well, that's just not true at all. You're just making stuff up. And I'm like, once again, the only way to not recognize that is to be so incredibly blinded by your own partisan preferences, or to have a learning disability, or both.
Okay, so that's a very good point, right? You have to understand that people are going to have political blinders on, okay? So if you are a right-wing guy, or if you are a fan of Donald Trump and you are a self-proclaimed MAGA to a certain extent, and you self-identify as that, I don't think you would necessarily really have the biggest problem in the world when it comes to, let's say, the UFC espousing certain right-wing views, right? Now, look, here's the thing. I think that this is a little bit misunderstood, especially on the left-wing side, and especially in the way that Luke Thomas is sort of conveying his message. Let me explain why, right? Because, first of all, yes, there is a culture of right-wing MMA guru, white nationalist type of ideals that is spewing around the world of MMA internet content, right? Make no mistake about it. Obviously, they took one page down, which I believe was Critical Eye MMA, an Irish MMA channel who also espoused white nationalist ethnocentric projects in which he wished to be fulfilled in his country of Ireland. And then what happens? He gets knocked off of YouTube just while he was on the verge of catching 10,000 subscribers, right? Which is the next, pretty much the next milestone after, let's say you get 1,000, then the next one is 10,000, and hopefully you get 100,000, and then YouTube gives you your plaque. So, what did my man here say? Wazin says, how do you say yes in Spanish? I don't understand why you need me to say yes in Spanish. I'm sure that's something that you can figure out. Not something that I need to say for you, just so you can try and set me up in some kind of funny and underhanded kind of way. But on any regard, all right, let's get back to, before we get back to Luke Thomas, I wanted to emphasize on this, right? So, okay, left-wing politics in MMA, it is prevalent in the culture of the internet that I was talking about, right? But what about the actual league of the MMA itself? Look, I think that the UFC is really standard when it comes to quote-unquote freedom of speech, although I will say there is a certain limitation of that. And what exactly are those limitations? Well, they could fall under two categories, right? Number one, the category is if you speak bad about the company's pay, right? Fighter pay, a big topic in MMA, which, by the way, is very controversial if you are a media member that wishes to be credited by the UFC. You ask these types of questions, you are going to be blacklisted. Ariel Helwani has suffered the same fate. Luke Thomas, the man who we are reacting to right now, has suffered this same fate. So there is a limit to what you can say and not say. But it seems that the limits are within the parameters that you can measure from the standards of right wing. And why do I say that? Well, because here's the thing, right? When they mean freedom of speech, you can argue and you can make the point that when they say freedom of speech, they actually mean you're allowed to say racist things, okay? That's literally what they mean, at least in the right-wing sphere of things. Now, you can correct me if I'm wrong. You can try to debate me on that. I'm not above correction, but that is literally where I stand on that particular topic. Okay, so it looks like Radical Coyote is spewing some Bible verses. Okay, so back to Luke Thomas on this one.
There really is no in between on that one. Now, keeping all of that in mind, let's play this Dana White clip, and then let's sort of unpack what it means.
I'm probably not as far right as everybody thinks I am. Everybody thinks I'm like far right. I literally, up until the world lost its mind, considered myself to be liberal. I leaned,
Now remember, these are some similar things that I had just mentioned to you before, right? Some of the things that I had mentioned to you before sort of predicated on the fact that, hey, a lot of these guys that have turned right-wing okay, have come from a background that is, let's say, left-leaning of some sort, right? So that left-leaning background that a lot of these people have gone through over the years, I'm talking about the guys that worked in construction, the guys that worked in, what are some liberal fields? For example, being a music producer, right? Look, here's the thing about Dana White. A lot of you guys may not understand. Dana White is a very artistic person. Okay, and what is indicative of me saying that Dana White is an artistic person? Well, take a look at the way that he runs the UFC. Yeah, I know it's all plain Jane. He just has people come out with, let's say, entrance music, and then after the entrance music, then that's about it, right? Seems all very plain and Jane, right? But Dana White has a mind of a music producer. If you really talk to the people behind the scenes in the UFC and the people that deal with productions and things of that nature, right? He has a mind of an artist. And he's even mentioned before, if he was not a fight promoter, Dana White would become a Suge Knight, Damian Dash type of figure in music, right? As some sort of like music producer or A&R for Capitol Records or Interscope or something like that. That is where Dana White would be, or at least that's where he claims he would be if he didn't have the right friends in Las Vegas, like let's say having rich billionaire friends that put him on, right? Which you can argue that anybody could have been put on if you were put in the right place at the right time, which kind of gives you the notion that, hey, it's not what you know, it's who you know type of things. So in any regard, Dana White is a very artistic person, right? And artistic people usually lean left. So when he says that he was left-leaning all of his life, I think he's very genuine, and I have no reason not to believe Dana White. I absolutely believe that, yes, he was this person that he claims to be, and then some. But I think somewhere down the line, there was a shift in culture. Right? What exactly was that shift in culture? Well, that shift in culture predicated on the idea of being woke, right? This idea of being woke, which, by the way, I got to be honest with you, the idea of woke is only a response to the decades and decades of blatant racism that perhaps maybe you would see in movies, perhaps maybe you would see in workplaces. So it was a pushback of some sort, right? But it got to the point where even people who were left-leaning got sick and tired of it, and as a result pivoted to the next political party, which, by the way, all political parties all throughout time evolved. You know the whole saying, oh, well, who freed the slaves? It was Abraham Lincoln, and he was a Republican. And then they would cite something along the lines that it was the Democrats who were the slave masters back in the days, right? They would always make that comment, but not really give you the full context behind it. The context of the reality that, hey, you know what? That was the Democratic Party back then, but this is the Republican Party now, and vice versa. Bread Boy, he says, do you love me? Shout outs to Sean Boy, man. Welcome back, my man. All right, back to this reaction that Luke Thomas has on Dana White saying he's not political.
A little left. But I would say that's probably the biggest misconception. Everybody thinks I'm like some far right, I'm not really even that political, to be honest with you.
I'm not really even that political, to be honest with you. To be honest with you, Dana, I can't think of a more overt political actor among any major important figure in the entirety of North American sports, maybe even all of the Western Hemisphere. I genuinely don't know if there's anyone even remotely approximating as political as he has been. I mean, to say something like this is just the height of being ludicrous. In fact, I wouldn't even be doing this on this channel if it weren't for the path that the UFC has taken under his leadership. Folks have asked me, like, why am I doing this? And I didn't have some grand plan. I was just observing the world around me. You have this complete...
You know what? Luke Thomas is right. And now here's another man that claims to not be political, right? But Luke Thomas is actually being honest about telling you that, hey, you know what? I'm a lefty. Okay, why am I a lefty? Well, because you believe in social services for everybody. You believe in equality for women, for whatever that means. You believe in LGBT rights. You believe in all of that. You believe in all these left-leaning ideals, right? So he makes no bones about it. He's very honest about the idea that, hey, you know what, my man? I am a left-wing guy. And as a left-wing guy, this is where I stand, and these are my observations that I had noticed about the world of MMA. I had noticed that there are these figures such as MMA Guru, there are these figures such as Sean Strickland, and even, by the way, some of the Brazilian fighters that you may not know about that sort of lean into the right. For example, take Paulo Costa, take Jose Aldo. What do they have in common politically? They are both supporters of this Brazilian politician by the name of Bolsonaro. Now, Bolsonaro was compared to Donald Trump. He had these policies that went after native Brazilians. He was pro-white Portuguese descent of people that were of that Brazilian persuasion. And here comes Jose Aldo and Paulo Costa endorsing them, right? So there is a certain right-wing leaning in the world of MMA, and it's not just exclusive to American fighters with the likes of Colby Covington, who sort of started that wave, right? And then everybody just started to copy ever since. Yes, you heard that right. I honestly think that it was Colby Covington that made that wave, and then all of a sudden, now everybody is a Trump supporter all of a sudden. Fresh Mellinger says, Luke is 100% gay or something freaky. That is the only reason for him supporting crazy people. Luke Rockhold, sorry, I just got here. No, we're talking about Luke Thomas, the former Marine turned MMA journalist who is, in my opinion, a very bright man, right? And it's not necessarily that I agree with any of his views. In fact, I disagree with a lot of his views. But one of the things that I like to emphasize with people is emotional maturity, right? Do I like some of the notions that Luke Thomas espouses? No, of course not. But I will tell you this. He's a smart man, and it's one thing that I recognize about him, and I'm not going to not give him credit for that as a result.
Uniting between the Ultimate Fighting Championship and its leadership with not just the leader of the free world, but prior to that, before the recent election, with this entire political movement that he spearheaded. And now they're trying to make the claim, like you have to laugh, that that's not really political. There's been nothing more political in sports in the entirety of my life. Not even close. Not even close. And I know folks might say, well, the NBA did a bunch of stuff with Black Lives Matter and the NFL too. That's true. And that is political.
He says, I would believe it if I found out he was Bear, LOL. Bear, are you talking about the co-host of Rampage Jackson's podcast? You mean, is that the Bear that you are talking about? If so, yeah, let me know on that one. Okay, so here's Luke Thomas once again. By the way, everybody, welcome to the Combat Radio episode 2, okay? I'm doing a little bit of an experiment here, which I think is, going quite well for its start, right? I'm sort of doing a side gig. This is a side gig that I do, right, where we talk about political things that sort of relate to MMA or sometimes not, but it does sort of focus into more of a political-centric type of content, right? And it is in radio form because one of my inspirations growing up, believe it or not, in political radio was Michael Savage. Let me know on the comment section below if you guys are familiar with Michael Savage. He was a Jewish conservative talk show host in New York. So meaning that in order for me to have listened to him back in the days, I would have to have tuned into a certain radio station, and that's where I heard him. But he was very controversial back in the days, and he had the voice for radio, as do I. And, it's just a little side content that we do, but don't trip. I will be on camera most of the time. Sometimes I won't. It just really depends. But either way, we're going to drop you this content because no matter what it is that I'm doing around the world, rest assured, right? No matter what it is that I'm doing around the world, one thing that I will always do is cover MMA or cover the news that deals with MMA or just the news in and of itself if it's big enough, just like the Charlie Kirk situation that I had covered and obviously became the biggest viewed content in this video, which kind of also inspired me to sort of lean into doing a political radio show, which is what we're doing right now. So, Victory says bear is the term, okay, G guys, used for hair. Oh, okay. Kyrie is drop shopping content. What do you mean by drop shopping content? Give me some context behind what you mean by that. Fresh. Okay, back to Luke Thomas and his reaction to Dana.
As well, it's not to say that the UFC is the only organization doing something political. No, that's not the point. But the claim that he's not political, or that his leadership has not been political, or that he didn't have this kind of effect on the sport, it's delusion to a degree that I don't even know what the word for would be. Understand something. As indicated, I wouldn't even be doing this but for the fact that they made this turn, and then I was like, well, if they're just going to combine these worlds, then I'm going to talk about both worlds. It's the reason why I'm doing this, and in a political way. But more to the point, there's something else that really sort of needs to be understood here. Dana White himself may not necessarily be some incredibly right-wing figure if you just look at, the nature of his particular policy positions. I would imagine, anytime someone says, hey,
Okay, so what did you say here? You said that drop shopping is an e-commerce business model where a store sells products online without keeping any inventory of its own. Oh, okay, interesting. Okay, I'll learn something new every day. Thank you for that. I don't know if that's necessarily what I'm doing, but yeah, I sort of just wanted, a particular content that was, how do I say this? Like freestyle mode, right? The other inspiration for this, by the way, a lot of the inspiration that I'm doing for what I'm doing right now is a lot of the inspiration that I got out of New York media. Okay, because for example, take in New York, there's the Hot 97, there's a Hot 97 radio station. What is it that Hot 97 emphasizes? Well, they got a lot of rappers that come through, they drop a freestyle, and that's sort of what I'm doing with this. This is sort of a freestyle, right? Like the content that I drop for you guys, the live streams and the videos, the regular videos where I appear in, they are what I would consider, let's say, an album, right? This right here, this is more considered like a freestyle. So, yeah, that's the comparison that I have with that one. But yeah, thank you for letting me know what drop shopping is. I never knew what that term was until now. Thank you.
I'm neither right nor left, or, I'm not all that political. When you actually interrogate their views, like they almost always end up being on the right-hand side of things. But listen, I don't think that he's some kind of like Nick Fuentes character or something.
Okay, so this is an interesting take by Luke Thomas right here, right? He says something to the effect that, hey, you know what? I don't think Dana White is a Nick Fuentes character or any kind. Hey, Dana White is not even a Michael Savage type of character, or a Mark Levin type of character, or whatever political right-wing characters you see out there, right? He's not a Candace Owens, not even an Andrew Tate. He's none of that. He's literally just the quintessential example of the regular guy that we all know who doesn't really have a strong political stance in certain things, but at the same time, even while they don't have a strong political stance in certain things, one of the things that you can always count on is, well, quite frankly, these are the type of guys that are gullible. And I'll drop some stories on, well, some friends of mine that I know that are really gullible and that are diehard Trump fans no matter what. And I just don't think that's the smartest choice to make. But all right, continue on.
That's really not my point. But that's also not the point that needs to be had. The reality is there are two things you should sort of say that he is connected to and or responsible for. The first one of which is that in the naked way that the UFC made a hardcore right-wing pivot, that it created a bunch of downstream effects as a consequence. Fighters who were previously keeping their political views to themselves not only began to share them on social media and other places, interviews and the like, but some of them ended up just becoming literal Trump or other candidates, surrogates in various campaigns. And again, not just Trump, as I mentioned before, Ron DeSantis, when he was running for re-election in Florida, held a rally at ATT along with other fighters to help, create a certain image and then boost his chances with a demographic of young men that are typically pretty hard to reach. It was a smart political play, but a political play nonetheless. So one thing that has happened as a consequence of this right-wing pivot is the downstream effect in either revealed preferences or, more broadly, turning the sport into a vector for right-wing politics. And I made a whole video on this. You can check it out up here. It's easy to understand, namely that in the choices that they've made, they have unleashed a set of forces down that sort of food chain that have all been either encouraged or emboldened or, you name it, to not only reveal their preferences, which again, I think some of those probably have already been there for a long time. It's always been part of my argument, but it's the second half, then turning it into a vector for right-wing politics. Even recently, a local promotion here in Northern Virginia, ahead of last Tuesday's elections, was using its own Instagram and other social media channels on the MMA side to promote a rally for the Republican Party in the state of Virginia. I mean, you see this kind of thing every.
All right, so this is what I got to say to all of that, right? All, the long-winded, chat with Luke Thomas on that one. Look, every country in the world uses sports as a strategy, right? And honestly, you would be a fool not to do so. Now, who is a great example of this? Obviously, the Arab Gulf states are using this for that reason. Look, even African countries, do you remember when Muhammad Ali fought George Foreman? There's a lot of political angles that came attaching to that fight. For example, that dictator that was holding the fight of that country, I mean, I urge you to look. I urge you to look up Rumble in the Jungle and all the things that have gone on with that one, because I don't want to steer off topic. But at the same time, I need you to understand that all sports, okay, especially in the mainstream level of things, are primarily used to create political angles, whether that is helping senators or whether that is helping presidents or whether that is helping certain people get into certain positions of power. That is an important aspect that we must understand about this. Fresh says, this is what have to say about Luke's words, G-A-Y. Well, explain why. Explain why you say that. Right? Because are you saying that out of good faith? Are you saying that out of the reason being that you are politically opposed to him? And if so, yeah, please give some details on that particular matter, if you can.
Anywhere now inside the sport, it has become a haven for right-wing politics and a vector for those who wish to use it for directly right-wing political aims. That didn't used to happen. That didn't used to be a thing. That was not a thing that happened even 5 years ago, much less 10 or 15, and certainly not 20 years ago. And in fact, that mission 20 years ago was the opposite, when Dana White was encouraging everyone after Yoel Romero knocked out Lyoto Machida that no one wants to hear your political opinions. We are through the looking glass now. We are long past that. And again, look at the name of my channel, Luke Thomas Gets Political. I was also emboldened to speak out politically by virtue of what they did. I'm not doing this but for that.
Look at me. They offered me $3,000 for my minor accident. This Harvard AI calculator showed me it was worth $85,000. Let me show you why. Let me show you something that's changing everything. This is a Case Connect compensation calculator. It's powered by a Harvard-level AI technology, and it analyzes over 100,000 accident settlements to determine your case value. Here's why this matters. Most people never discover their accident's true worth. They accept what the insurance offers and leave thousands on the table. This changes everything. It asks for 4 simple questions.
Now, that's just one component of it. There's a secondary component which we need to interrogate even further. As I mentioned, Dana White may not necessarily be on a personal level, some kind of hardcore right-wing figure, but he's definitely political. Pablo Torre posted this list of all the donations, and there's definitely some Democrats in there. And folks have noted, hey, isn't it just a guy who is rich and famous and, just wants to give some money here, give some money there, promote this, promote that?
Yes, you know what that is? That is called hedging your bet, right? So if there is documents of him sort of supporting left-wing candidates as opposed to also right-wing candidates, well, that only means a couple of things. Look, I'll tell you, right? I am neither a Democrat or a Republican, but But I could tell you that during college, I did an internship helping a state assemblyman by the name of Brian Mainshine in California, right? So I thought, okay, you know what? For a school project and for earning internship, I have to, find some kind of internship in the political sphere of things, right? So, okay, so I decided I was going to go with this guy because I liked his story. What did I like about State Assembly Brian Mainshine's story? He was a former Republican who became a Democrat. And I want you to keep in mind, I am not a Democrat in any capacity whatsoever, right? But what I liked and what attracted me to this particular candidate in the state assembly line is that he is willing to change his mind if, let's say, he is met with a new information or a new set of beliefs or a new set of system that was presented to him as a better option. So I thought, you know what, this sounds like a very mature-minded individual, right? So when you have a mature-minded individual like that, don't you want to get behind a guy like that, regardless of whether he was a Republican or a Democrat? Now, what made Brian Mainshine go from being a Republican to a Democrat? Well, he said he did not like the direction that the Republican Party was going, and that is one of his primary motivations as to why he did what he did. Now, come to think of it, it makes a lot of sense. In hindsight, if you look at all the things that Trump is, sort of facing right now. You know what I mean? So I want you to think about that for a second.
Maybe he's got one party he likes over the other, but kind of spreads out the wealth and spreads out the influence just to make sure that no matter who's in office, his back can be scratched. And yes, of course, there is something to be said for that. That is also a part of it. And denial of that would be crazy. If you look on some of this list, particularly pre-2020, you'll see a little bit more of the Democrats and Republicans evenly split. Since 2020, a lot less so. It's gone mostly, almost entirely, frankly, in one direction. But that's really not the point either. The point is, what did he help usher in? He helped return Donald Trump to office when his political future was basically pretty close to dead. Understand the timeline of things. He not only helped rehabilitate Donald Trump after the guy tried to literally steal a presidential election using a fake elector scheme, which, by the way, he just pardoned.
Look, is there any truth to that, right? It's not something that I've further investigated into or really have a definitive fact on. But if you guys know anything about any truth to that possibility of Donald Trump faking an election or anybody in the Republican Party, let me know in the comments section below.
And everyone involved in that tried to steal a presidential election the first time he ever made a real public return in a grand kind of way. Where was it? By July of 2021, now 6 or so months after the January 6th riot, insurrection, whatever you like to call it, here is Donald Trump right back at things at UFC 264. But it actually goes much, much further than just this. Let's follow the timeline.
Okay, so now Luke is going to get into the timeline of these situations, right? This is very, very interesting right here, right? You look at the timeline of when he was going to the UFCs just right before he became the president. And come to think of it, it kind of made sense. Do you remember also he showed up as a commentator for a fight? Do you know what fight that was? That was Vitor Belfort against Holyfield. And crazy enough, he's promoted a lot of Holyfield's fights in the 90s, as he did with Mike Tyson. And then here he is watching Holyfield get starched by an MMA fighter who, by the way, you can argue was also in his prime, at least when he was a 19-year-old Vitor Belfort during 1997 when Evander Holyfield was beating the heck out of Mike Tyson. Put that in perspective. So, all right, back to Luke Thomas on this one.
Let's start now in 2023. In March of 2023, he's indicted under 34 counts in New York. Just 9 days later, he's at UFC 287 in Miami. In June of 2023, there is a classified documents indictment that is unsealed. Just less than a month later, he's at UFC 290. And in August of 2023, Both the January 6th obstruction indictment comes through, as well as the Georgia RICO indictment. 3 months later, at UFC 295, there's Donald Trump. And in May of 2024, after the conviction in his New York trial, just 2 days later, at UFC 302, there he is, front and center. This has, by the way, not even counting the millions he's given to Trump's super PAC.
I mean, think about this, right? Think about how many times Trump has been in the UFC over those past months, right? Even after the presidency. Now, look, I got to be honest with you. As an MMA content creator, I'm thankful for it. You want to know why? Let's be honest. Donald Trump, whether you guys like it or not, is good for business. He is absolutely good for business because he's controversial. When you look at CNN, okay, during his first presidency, their ratings went up. During the Joe Biden era, their ratings went down because Joe Biden, I mean, you can argue, he goes through the motion of his job, or maybe sometimes he does his job well, or sometimes he doesn't do his job at all. But the one thing that you can count on with Joe Biden is that he doesn't move the needle, okay? And this is very similar to Bilal Muhammad. Why doesn't Bilal Muhammad move the table? Well, quite frankly, Bilal Muhammad does not do enough emotive expressions in order to provoke your dopamine to propel yourself to watch him. That is what you get with Bilal Muhammad. That is what you get with Joe Biden. But when you have Donald Trump, it's like what Donald Cerrone said. What did he say about Donald Trump? Yeah, man, well, you know what, Donald Trump, he's like a Conor McGregor type of guy, except he doesn't strike me with his shoulder when he meets me, right? That is an obvious reference to Conor McGregor throwing shoulder strikes at Donald Cerrone at that time. But yeah, all right, back to what Luke Thomas was saying here.
This is, by the way, not counting other appearances that are not even connected to like the criminality of what he was alleged to have done. This is not the sum total of his UFC appearances, just the ones where there's proximity to where he had gotten into trouble. And by the way, spoke at the 2016, 2020, and 2024 Republican National Conventions, and it's common that the spouse of the president or the person trying to become president is the one who finally introduces them when they come to the dais after several days of convention. In 2024, it was Dana White. On the night of the election when Trump won, White was with him and then spoke at that dais at that event as well. Understand something here. Dana White, through his leadership with the Ultimate Fighting Championship, not only has given this grand permission structure to create MMA as a vector for right-wing politics, but more to the point, even if Dana himself doesn't necessarily share all of Trump's opinions or, a sort of more moderate version of them, he did his level best by himself and through his organization and the visibility that they have to make the 2.0 MAGA project reality.
Now, I agree with that. Now, you want to know what this White House fight card is all about? If you want to know what this whole White House card is all about, hit the like button right now. Hit the subscribe button. I'm going to give you the reason why. First, hit the like button. Hit the subscribe button. It's toilet says nuh-uh. Nuh-uh what? What exactly are you saying nuh-uh to? If, let me know on the comment section below what you are talking about. Okay, so here it is. I'm going to tell you why they did this UFC fight card. The reason why they are doing this UFC fight card is because it is a gift back to the people that have put Donald Trump back in office. It's as simple as that. That is the reality of the situation. Okay, let me repeat that again. It is literally to help give a gift to the supporters of Donald Trump that put him back in office. That is all it is.
He owns this. Whatever else happens, whatever he can say about, well, I don't agree with this and I agree with that, it doesn't matter. He helped to financially partly bankroll it.
What Luke Thomas means by saying that he owns this is that also includes all these ICE raids that are very controversial right now. Fresh Melon Drew says, Donald Trump is a valued member of the boxing community in addition to being a great fan of our sport. He became a promoter in the 80s and 90s. Correct. This is why you will never hear me say anything bad about him when it comes to MMA or when it comes to him going to MMA shows, right? Now, I will only criticize him based on his policies that he chooses, but when it comes to his personal choice of going to the UFC. That is not something I'm definitely going to attack him for, because it does nothing but promote our sport, brings visibility to the sport. In turn, it brings visibility to fighters, and in turn, it brings visibility to the content creators like myself and anybody that's involved in mixed martial arts. He says that's why it can never be political now. That's why it can never be political now. Well, when you argue that that's actually what makes it more political, but let me know and elaborate more on the comment section below. He says it's what he does. Yes, it's definitely what he does. All right, back to Luke Thomas.
As well as to give it public visibility at key portions when his image was in tatters through alleged criminal conduct, to say nothing of what we know for a fact, that he tried to outright steal a presidential election. At those key moments, which isn't even the sum total of them, it was the UFC under his leadership providing rehabilitation, providing visibility, creating, by the way, documentary, Combatant-in-Chief, among being a media surrogate, numerous podcasts he had done. Over and over again, he helped. I can't say that he alone in the UFC alone are the architects of this. They are absolutely key contributors. And in that video I had made arguing that MMA is a right-wing sport, we had talked about various figures in the MMA and in the political world, both crediting UFC with helping return Trump to office as an absolutely crucial ingredient. Whatever happens with this MAGA experiment, whether democracy goes away, whether authoritarianism creeps up, whether we get economic ruin, whether people are killed in the Caribbean, whether people are and their communities are destroyed through ice mask thugs, and going on and on and on. Dana helped make all of this possible.
And I completely agree with that. Okay? I completely agree with that. Dana White, yeah, I completely agree with that notion. Dana White absolutely made all of this possible. Okay? There's no doubt about that.
Whatever happens from here, he will be connected to this political project for the rest of history. You can't walk it back now. It's too late. This is your handiwork.
All right, Fresh. Now listen, you're talking to me here, right? Who, by the way, doesn't agree with everything that Luke Thomas stands for, right? Tell me why you believe he's a moron. Because from what I'm hearing as an opposition of his, I'm hearing a man that is quite reasonable, though at the same time very partisan in his approach, very partisan in his biasness, which is something that, you can't deny. But at the same time, I mean, what makes him a moron? Please elaborate.
Helped make this. And not just a little help, a lot of help. Significant, critical portions of creating help. This is the fruit of his labors. MAGA 2.0 is not in office, in all likelihood. Again, you can't say the UFC was the only factor there. Of course not. That'd be silly. But in really making this possible, he bears enormous responsibility. And it's nice when that becomes credit. But now we're kind of moving into the part where, they don't want so much credit. It's now responsibility. I mean, they want credit when it's good. But when it starts going bad, it goes from credit to responsibility. And that's where we are. I know folks have said, well, listen, this is not him being political. It's just paying back a favor. Even if that were true, and it's really not, but even if that were true, you still own everything you helped put into place.
Okay, so once again, you still own everything that you helped put into place. Yes. That is what it is. That is what happens when you vote for certain people. That is what happens when you take a certain side in the political aisle. There's no way around that. That's really what happens overall. So the idea that Dana White is not responsible for the ICE raids, he's not responsible. He didn't make up those policies. But he knew what kind of wild card Trump is. Look, guys, I'm going to tell you something. There's a lot of reasonable people out there who have crazy friends, okay? Those same reasonable people who have crazy friends are also the same people that enable their behavior. Now, I'm not saying Dana White enables his behavior, but I kind of see where Luke Thomas is coming from with this. So once again, if you guys disagree with me on that notion, you are more than welcome to disagree with that. But to me, so far, even though I don't agree with everything, Luke seems to make a lot of sense to me.
You can't provide that a kind of material support to a political project, and then when the consequences of it come crashing down and people have an impression that's like, well, we think now you're hardcore right wing. I can see why people might think that. Maybe it's not true. I can understand why he thinks he's not hardcore right wing, and perhaps he is not. Like, he's right wing, but not hardcore. Doesn't matter. You put into place a hardcore right wing project, and that hardcore right wing project is now materially fucking up everything. Can't walk it back now, and we're not even a year in. We've got at least 3 more to go. If there are even free and fair elections in 2026, and if there's even free and fair elections.
You know, that's crazy to think about, right? I mean, we are literally just 3 years away, and yet, yeah, man, you know, it's been 1 year. Man, Trump really did a lot in 1 year. Regardless of what you think about him, he definitely did a lot within this single year.
In 2028, we shall see. This is the fruit of the tree he planted, watered, gave sunlight, pruned, you name it. This is it. To usher in these kinds of political forces into the world, and then to say that you're not actually political, it's impossible. It's impossible. You can't actually do it. But it does bring up something kind of interesting, namely, one, he's just helping a friend. Guys, can anyone name the 2 events? First of all, they were at the Taj Mahal before the UFC was even bought out by Dana White and his partners at that time. They were in there in 2000 before he was even there. So first of all, they'd already gone to Trump Taj Mahal with the UFC before Dana and Lorenzo and Frank Fertitta were the essentially the owners. Then they do go there twice. People have said, was this helpful to the UFC? Yes, it was definitely helpful to them. Why didn't they ever go back? In fact, they went to New Jersey later that year, the same year, and didn't go back.
Okay, so let's take a look at the dates that they are talking about here. Hold on a second here.
No matter your industry, Grainger's here for you with professional grade supplies. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
People have tried to turn this into what and didn't go back.
Okay, so let's see. They came at November 2nd to 20. Okay, wait, where is that? East Rutherford, New Jersey. Okay, Mandalay Bay, 2001. Atlantic City, May of 2001, February of 2001, right after. Okay, so, and then they never came back. Okay, so that's where he's getting at with this one.
People have tried to turn this into, well, you know, this was the turning point for the UFC. No, it wasn't. Can you name anyone who fought on those cards? Why didn't they go back? The turning point was 2005. They lost money in 2001. They lost money in 2002. They lost money in 2003. They lost money in 2004. They were on the ropes at that point. It was 2005 and The Ultimate Fighter on Spike TV. That is the way in which you know that they turned their fortunes around, and no one has made a bigger point of that than Dana White himself. I was around the sport before 2004 as well as after 2004, or 2005, I should say. And I can tell you that no one was talking about the couple of shows early on in the UFC's run, except for what a disaster the first one was, because it went over the time on pay-per-view. Not a Trump issue one way or the other. And now they're sitting there trying to argue that it was some kind of material turning point. It was helpful. It's a real thing that he did. I don't deny it. But it was mostly a blip on the radar. It was not some significant improvement to their conditions. They would have still gone out of business, but for the Ultimate Fighter television show. That was the stroke of genius that they had. That was the big turning point. That was the one that changed.
Okay, so once again, that's a very good point, right? Now, did Trump, attribute to the UFC in any kind of capacity? Of course he did in the earlier days. But really, yes, Luke is talking about the difference between 2001 and 2000. So yeah, 2005 and 2001 are two totally different eras. You know, two completely different eras, right? The 2001 is when they were sort of going broke a little bit. And then it was in 2005 that they really had a breakthrough with the Ultimate Fighter, right? Nothing to do with Trump whatsoever. So that's what Luke is hinting at. By the way, guys, stay tuned for hour number 2, because hour number 2, we will talk about Anthony Joshua. Breaking news, Anthony Joshua signing to fight Jake Paul. We're going to talk about that in exactly 5 minutes or less.
Everything. I wasn't doing a couple of shows at the Taj Mahal. Last but not least, there's actually an important point here to be made. I did a video on this channel some time ago about Joe Rogan trying to claim that he's not anti-woke. People have called him anti-woke and he kind of rejects it. They'll call the comedy mothership anti-woke and he rejects it. He's like, no, I'm not any of those things. I'm just a normal guy. And we talked about how there's a bunch of research and looking into folks who have advocated policies that are explicitly one thing, that have a clear partisan right-wing valence, this anti-woke valence, and then they'll just kind of try and dress it up as...
Okay, look, I'm a little bit skeptical of these studies, right? You got to remember, the universities are dominated by left-wing politics, right? It is dominated by left-wing politics. As a result of that, don't you think there's going to be a skewed biasness that sort of comes with that? I don't know, man, but that is what they are saying. They are saying that this study shows that if they think this way, that they lean that way. And if they lean that way, then that means this, that, and the other. I just don't know how accurate that is, but all right, let's continue on.
A moderate middle, you know, a normal part of the whole thing. I'm common sense. Meanwhile, what they're advocating for is expressly hardcore right-wing politics. Though they don't call it that. They call it being some kind of moderate center. But then in the real world, again, what fruit does your political project bear, or in this particular case, your artistic project bear? And the reality is it bears right-wing fruit. That's just what it does, no matter what they call it. They call it something else. The point I'm trying to make to everybody here is you can see why this debate, to go full circle here, Dana White, Joe Rogan, and the broader MMA community engaging in expressly right-wing behavior, facilitating expressly right-wing political projects, engaging in expressly right-wing talking points and creating, to a degree, right-wing art, or a bare minimum a haven for it, and then the whole time pretending that it's not any of those things. Again, the only way to not see that is either one, you're just hopelessly partisan and you're blind to it, or two, you have a learning disability. You have cognitive impairment. There is no other way to do it, but you can see the game that's being played here. They'll act in the most partisan kinds of ways. They'll do it in ways that to every other observer are absolutely unambiguous. And then they'll tell you with a straight face, it's either common sense, down the middle, moderate, or not even political at all. When in fact, UFC President Dana White is easily the most political actor in my lifetime, whether he likes it or whether he doesn't. Whether this MAGA project turns out good or bad, he's part of it for the rest of history. I don't know what else to tell you.
All right, so I think Luke Thomas has a certain point there, right? Now, look, here's the thing. It is up to the Republicans to say, you know what? Yes, we are using this as a political strategy, but so what? Be honest with it. If you're honest with it, I think that a lot of people will appreciate that. I think they try to dress this up as like, well, all right, you know, I'm sort of down in the middle, but at the same time, I support Trump. You can't support Trump and then say you're right down the middle, because quite frankly, Trump does nothing that is right down the middle. I mean, some topics and certain subjects he does, but then on others, it is just outright right-wing fascism, if not authoritarianism at best, especially with the indication of sending National Guards to Chicago, sending National Guards to Los Angeles. And you can argue that these places are crime-ridden cities, but then where was this in the 90s or 80s or whatever, right? It was a lot worse then, and you're going to send them now. But on any regard, hour number 2, we're just going to be on briefly, just right before we have the premiere of my video regarding Tom Aspinall getting stripped. So right now, we're going to go from one heavyweight to another, and that is Anthony Joshua getting the fight against Jake Paul, and it has been reported by Ariel Helwani today. Let's hear what he had to say on this particular topic.
My name is Ty. My proudest financial accomplishment is retiring by the time I got to 40. When the layoff did happen.
In the midst of the show, we get the report from my commentator of the ring, who states that the exact language. Let me see if I can ring X my commentator. The exact language is as follows. I think we do have the tweet as well, right? Anthony Joshua and Jake Paul are finalizing a deal for a heavyweight fight on Netflix in December in Miami. Sources tell Ring Magazine Paul steps up massively to fight the former heavyweight champion after his exhibition with Gervonta Davis was canceled. Major props to Paul. So there you have it. In the midst of all this, I did reach out to Eddie Hearn, as did Gareth, and he said, "We have spoken, but nothing close, and I doubt he would be so crazy." He being Jake. I then asked him, would you say this report is premature? He said, absolutely. And then I said, can I attribute?
So Jake Paul is going to fight Anthony Joshua. Man, I got to say, has Jake Paul lost his mind? And I think that he has. Now, is it that he lost his mind, or is it that Jake Paul is just in a situation right now where, you know what, I got nothing to lose. I've already made all the money in the world. If I was to lose to Anthony Joshua, people in a way sort of know exactly what that is. He's a bigger guy. He's a former heavyweight champion of the world, and I'm supposed to be just the so-called beginner, right? But it doesn't seem like a beginner move to challenge Anthony Joshua. It seems that challenging Anthony Joshua is predicated on the idea that, hey, you know what? I've been training for this long, and I belong in this championship level. Or it's one of those situations where Jake Paul is looking at this, saying to himself, you know what, man? I've been training long enough, and I can take this guy. Not only can I take this guy, he is also declining in the current moment of time right now. Anthony Joshua is declining, so maybe I have a chance. Now, the decline should not be indicative of the Daniel Dubois fight, because Daniel Dubois is one of the best heavyweights in the world right now. And to make that an indicative point of some kind of indicator showing that, hey, you know what, this is going to be an easy fight for Jake Paul, man, you got to understand Anthony Joshua is still a high-level operator, depending on, even though he had lost to one of the best heavyweights in the world, and that being Dubois, that being Alexander Usyk, and also that being Andy Ruiz, only to come back and beat Andy Ruiz. But then you look at Andy Ruiz's career right now, where exactly is he at in comparison to Anthony Joshua?
He said yes. And so what do we make of this, guys? Do we think there's smoke to this fire? PT, what do you think? Do you think this is something that could actually happen? This would be within the next month, right? This would be sometime between now and probably December 19th or so, in that time frame. What do you think?
I think it's a huge fight. You know, I didn't expect this at all. Usually when Jake is in a fight, the odds feel like they're stacked very much in his favor. This is the complete opposite of that. I'd very much agree with Gareth A. Davis's take, which was, I'd expect Joshua to obliterate him in a boxing match. I mean, look what Anthony Joshua did to Francis Ngannou before that Dubois fight. Like, I mean, it was a completely different affair than the Tyson Fury fight. I think, having heard Eddie Hearn's update,
I think if there is one way you can indicate this fight and understanding how it's going to go, maybe Francis Ngannou is an indicator of that. By the way, speaking of Francis Ngannou, he was supposed to be the one to take this challenge against Jake Paul. But Jake Paul or Francis Ngannou did not want to take it, and as a result, here we are.
and having looked at that tweet again, it feels like boxing's equivalent to the old in the works reporting that we used to see in MMA an awful lot, right? Like when we weren't quite sure, maybe one side had verified that this fight is happening, but you can't get the other side to commit, and it's in the works. It's a huge fight. The one thing I will say is, why would you want that out there? Why would the ring report this? Why would someone give them that information if it wasn't going to happen? Now, because everything else pales in comparison to this, as far as I'm concerned.
Well, there you go. The Ring magazine, right? Now, what is important about the Ring magazine? Obviously, they are owned by the Saudis in a current moment of time. And as a result of that ownership, well, they can push any fight that they want. What if they really do want, Jake Paul to get obliterated by Anthony Joshua? And Turki El-Sheikh has mentioned that before. He's mentioned, hey, listen, I want to see Jake Paul get laid out. I want to see Jake Paul get finished so that we can end all of this. And then with Anthony Joshua, we're going to find out if he really still needs to keep going or if this is the end of the road. Because obviously losing to Jake Paul is an indicator of being that it's the end of the road, right? Or so we think.
Every other fight that they had, perspective or potential, I don't think it's as big as Anthony Joshua. So I don't know.
This isn't a ring fight, right? This isn't a ring fight. Anthony Joshua is tied to DAZN. Anthony Joshua has a relationship with Turki El-Sheikh in Riyadh season. The ring is owned by Turki El-Sheikh. And Mike Coppinger works for Turki El-Sheikh and Ring Magazine. And so they can catch wind of the fact that, hey, maybe an offer is being made. This is us now hypothesizing. I've not done the research, but to answer the question, an offer maybe has been made, because for Anthony Joshua to leave DAZN, he's one of the crown jewels of DAZN. DAZN would have to be paid for him to leave DAZN and fight on Netflix, right? We heard Oscar De La Hoya talk about this when the Ryan Garcia report came out, and he's like, no, he's a DAZN fighter. Katie Taylor was also a DAZN fighter, but Eddie Hearns talked about convincing DAZN to say, like, hey, this is too big of an opportunity. We want her to go do this, and thus they allowed her to do it twice. And maybe there's a chance that DAZN says, like, hey, we don't want to keep letting our fighters go over to another platform here. We're still in the business of trying to sell fights to the public. And so maybe he catches wind of that, and maybe he goes ahead. Now, this isn't me refuting his report. Please, let's be very clear here. I'm not trying to get into any sort of controversy, courtesy of one Pete Carroll. I'm just saying I can understand how this could get out and how it could also be somewhat premature. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Well, Eddie Hearn is saying it's premature. He's Anthony Joshua's manager.
Promoter.
Okay, so maybe the reason why they are saying it's premature is predicated on the fact that, hey, you know what? We got to have the right time and the right promotion. Remember when Ariel Helwani got kicked out of UFC 199 because he announced the Brock Lesnar and the Mark Hunt fight, which, by the way, later became somewhat of a disaster of a lawsuit that Mark Hunt is sort of facing right now. But that's another story for another time. But yes, that is sort of the reason behind all of this.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like, we're just saying this here. He's the one that said that. He said it to you, and he said it to Gareth A. Davies. He's going to know about it if this fight is happening. It can't happen without him giving it the go-ahead. So I think that's.
But is there a chance he's working me?
Working across teams is tough, but Asana helps you handle it. Asana AI can spot roadblocks and assign work to keep everything on track. That's how work gets handled. Visit us at asana.com.
Oh, to what end?
Okay.
What would be the benefit?
I don't know. Maybe they're in talks. Maybe he doesn't want to piss off DAZN. There's a lot that's going on here. There's a lot at play.
By the way, guys, at the end of the hour, at the beginning of the hour, 5 p.m. West Coast time, I have a new video out. Tom Aspinall getting stripped of the heavyweight championship. Maybe not now, maybe later on, but I'm going to give you explanations as to why, and it involves him refusing to fight Cyril Gane for a rematch. Okay, that's coming up at 5 p.m. New video coming out as we are ready to wrap up the conference call podcast that is conducting right now. Obviously, right now, we talked about earlier with Dana White being, being anti-political, right? And the backlash that he got out of that, but also talking about the influence of Donald Trump in the game of mixed martial arts. But now we're reacting to Anthony Joshua taking on Jake Paul. We'll find out if this is a reality or not.
There's a lot of people. I still believe that of all the options out there, Visser and Ngannou are the two best and biggest. I don't have a great desire to see him fight someone who is 60 pounds smaller than him, even if he is as accomplished as a Ryan Garcia or a Tank Davis. Let me ask you, Rick, how do you think, if this actually comes to fruition, Do you think that the majority of the people in the UK and in the boxing community will have the same opinion of Gareth, which is, I was a little surprised when he said, like, this would tarnish his legacy. Like, at this point, he just fought Francis Ngannou, and I know Francis Ngannou isn't Jake Paul and vice versa, but we also have seen many a boxer take these side quests and be just fine. Why would a fight against Jake at this point tarnish his legacy?
No, it would help his legacy. It would be the guy who finally put an end to this Jake Paul thing, right? If he goes out there and puts Jake Paul in the dirt, he's going to be heralded. He's going to be a hero for ending this experiment. Because I think if it does go disaster.
Will he, though, if you think about it? I mean, will it really go like that? I mean, because we kind of know that Jake Paul is an experiment in a way, right? And we kind of know that, Francis Ngannou could lay him out, but could he lay him out in a boxing world? And believe it or not, this fight is actually a whole lot closer than people would like to believe.
Disastrously wrong for Jake Paul here. This feels like the highest leverage situation. This feels like the highest stakes. Whereas I didn't feel that way about like a loss to Tommy Fury or anything like that.
Okay, you've always said that. You've always said if he gets knocked the F out by Anthony Joshua, which could happen. Look what he did to Francis Ngannou, who had never been rocked or knocked down, let alone knocked out before. Is that the end?
That's probably the end of him as a viable boxer, right? Because there's always been a justification, right? You lose to Tommy Fury. It's like, are you motivated? Do you care? Who cares about this thing altogether? Gervonta Davis, he's a small man. There's always like everybody will always find a way to minimize Jake Paul's accomplishments and kind of sweep it away. When it comes to Anthony Joshua, he's now facing a real boxer. There's like, think what you want of Jake Paul, but there's no way you cannot identify Anthony Joshua as a tough challenge, as a top-level boxer, and somebody that should put Jake Paul in the dirt. And so his willingness to take that fight says something about Jake Paul. And as far as Anthony Joshua's part of it goes, it's a high risk for him because if he doesn't put Jake Paul in the dirt, it's going to look pretty bad on him. I do think that is how that would ultimately go, though.
What's your level of interest?
So there you go. That is the reason why Francis Ngannou is hesitant to take this fight. Yet, listen, is it an easy fight on paper, at least from what we know of Francis Ngannou, and then the ridiculous notions that we have of Jake Paul? Yes, right? If you actually believe that he's not a real boxer, which at this point sounds really ridiculous. I mean, we're not in 2020 or 2018 when he first started, right? We're way past that. He's a lot more seasoned now. He's had a lot of wins under his belt. Yes, against combat athletes of different sports other than boxing, but they were combat athletes regardless. And then one of them was Tommy Fury, of which he lost, right? Which kind of indicates many things. But we'll see. We'll see if that actually is indicative of anything, or maybe just Tommy Fury declining, or just, a sense of a changed lifestyle. By the way, guys, don't forget, new video coming out. Title strip, Tom Aspinall refusing a rematch against Cyril Gane. That's coming up at 5 p.m., and that is in 7 minutes from now.
Mr. Connor Burks, what do you think about this? How do you think people will receive this?
Mr. Connor Burks, yeah, I'm very interested in it. I'm already seeing the tweets and Instagram posts online that people definitely want to see this fight happen if Jake Paul is going to fight anyone. I can't imagine a fight that would garner more interest. It's a legitimate boxer in Anthony Joshua who has massive wins on his resume. He's much bigger than Jake Paul. He is a global superstar. And also, he's going to be a massive favorite in it. To me, it just makes sense from a standpoint of if you're Jake Paul and you somehow pull this off and you beat Anthony Joshua, you silence all the doubters out there. You beat a guy in Anthony Joshua that you're not.
Because now on top of it, it's a guy that, well, you know what? They're still going to argue that he's not in his prime, but at the same time, for the career trajectory that Jake is at right now, it would actually be good for him. By the way, guys, 6 minutes. 6 minutes until the premiere of the next video coming up. Title strip, Tom Aspinall refusing rematch with Cyril Gane.
Supposed to be. And then if you're someone that doesn't like Jake Paul, you want to tune in to see him get knocked out, you put it on Netflix. To me, it makes a ton of sense from a visibility standpoint, from getting the most eyes on it. Obviously, you're never going to top the Tyson thing just because of who Mike Tyson is, but right now, especially on short notice with 5 weeks until the fight's supposed to happen, it feels like AJ is about as good as you could possibly do.
We've come a long way, by the way. You remember AJ was an open critic of the Ngannou Fury fight to then fight Ngannou, and if in fact he does fight Jake Paul, but there's a lot of money to be made.
I was gonna say, man, the money talks. Money can change opinions.
The way Eddie framed it up is like, why would I not take the easiest payday of my life? And he proved it against Francis Ngannou. Now he's got an even easier one, in my opinion. Like, I just don't think Jake Paul can be competitive with Anthony Joshua. Like, Jake Paul will not win this fight. Connor said, like, what if, Jake Paul pulls up? This will not happen. I can guarantee you Jake Paul will not beat Anthony Joshua in boxing.
All right, you know what? I believe that. I don't believe that he could just easily take on Anthony Joshua, but man, I tell you what, the balls on Jake Paul to take this fight, right? Like, why is he taking this fight in the first place? Is it because he knows that it's a money fight? I mean, look, is there really a part of Jake Paul that knows he's going to win? Also, how about this? What if we are in a concept where, let's say, maybe he goes out and, I don't know, for whatever reason, decides to go and take steroids? That's a reality that we could definitely face here.
But you do have to respect his, as I've always said about Jake Paul, I want to see him in a spectacle. I want to see him putting on big fights and interesting fights. I don't really care about his journey as this like top level boxer. So the idea that he's already like escalating this, right? Let's not forget, it wasn't too long ago that he was trying to fight Canelo Alvarez, the guy that Terrence Crawford just beat and made his legacy off of, right? Terrence was a guy who's a fantastic boxer. I've always thought #1 pound for pound, but somebody who never really took hold in the boxing world and never became like a mainstream household name. He just made his name on the back of Canelo on Netflix. He was trying to fight that guy, and now he's stepping up to the plate and say, like, the Gervonta one, I don't have an explanation for. That one really didn't do anything for me. But now he's stepping up to the plate and saying, I want to fight Anthony Joshua. He talked about the kind of David and Goliath nonsense when it was related to Tank. He really is in a David and Goliath situation against Anthony Joshua. So think whatever you want of Jake Paul, but I have to respect what he's trying to do here. And I respect the spectacle that this could potentially be and what an attraction it could possibly be on the combined global stardom of Jake Paul and Anthony Joshua. I'm very interested in it, and I think a lot of people will be tuning in to see him get his clock cleaned.
All right, I have found playable odds.
Okay.
I think that's.
Fight. I'm sorry. Go ahead, PT.
Go, PT.
Oh, sorry. I think I'm with Rick in terms of how I'd see this fight going. I think it's not a contest at all, but that's where the jeopardy exists if this was to happen for Anthony Joshua. If you go into this fight and he can somehow go late into this fight with you even, I think that's where you get into the territory of tarnishing legacies like Gareth A. Davies said. And as Gareth said as well, if this fight's made, are you honestly not expecting to see that headline on TalkSport immediately? Like, that is straight away where they're going to go with this. But again, it's going to stir the pot. It's going to have everyone talking about it. It's the type of thing that everyone will have an opinion on. And that's, again, what we've seen with all Jake Paul's fights. Like, people can say, oh, I don't care about this. He has everyone talking. And the Tyson fight proved he can get eyeballs. I think this will work in the same way. But I do believe that the jeopardy exists for Anthony Joshua by not performing the way he did against Francis Ngannou, which was a complete annihilation. So it's actually, like, perception-wise.
So there you go. That is exactly what Anthony Joshua needs to do in this fight in order to really look good, and that is to obliterate Jake Paul, just like what he did with Francis Ngannou. Now, Francis Ngannou made it competitive against Tyson Fury, whereas with Anthony Joshua, he said, not so fast. You're not going to get that competitive with me. By the way, guys, 2 more minutes. 2 more minutes until the video premiere of title strip incoming. Tom Aspinall refuses rematch with Cyril Gane. Okay, and yes, more on this breaking news of Anthony Joshua and Jake Paul finalized for December. Is it really? We'll find out.
I can see Jake Paul getting some kind of win if he can just go a few rounds with this guy, because that's how much expectation will be on the shoulders of Joshua.
What are the odds?
I'd like for you guys to guess first. What do you think?
I'm going to be off because I'm
minus 1,000.
So skewed.
Joshua.
Anything less than minus 1,000 is a second mortgage for me.
Okay.
I'm with you, Rick.
Joshua favorite, obviously. I don't want to say the same thing, so I'll go minus 2,000.
Okay. Rick and Pizzi winner. Anthony Joshua minus 1,000. 1 plus 560. And what's crazy?
What about knockout?
I'm going to be eating meals for a little bit.
Can I get an advance?
No knockout, no knockout prop available yet, but I mean that's kind of the beauty in it. If you are a Jake Paul detractor, if you're tuning in, this is a guy 25 of his 28 wins are by knockout. So if he wins, more than likely you're gonna get to see Jake Paul get sparked out.
Yeah. Man, it would be.
I think he has to. I think. Do you not think that, Ariel? Like.
All right, so if you want to listen to the rest of that, be sure to check out Ariel Helwani's breaking news on that one. I just happen to see this right now, so this is fresh news that I sort of wanted to add into this. So it looks like the video is now premiering right now. I urge you guys to take a look at the video that I have out right now that is premiering. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Guys, I will see you in the next one. Go check it out right now. It is up right now, and it will be on in less than 1 minute. So I'm going to give it about a 1 minute countdown, and then I will see you guys at the premiere of my video. And by the way, don't forget to like and subscribe. I'm going to be signing off right here, and I'm going to let you listen to the sounds of the cinematic premiere sound that YouTube has offered for us. So please go to the premiere right now. Don't forget to like and subscribe. See you in the next one. Go to the video premiere right now.